Have you ever been caught outside when the rain simply refused to stop? Your clothes grow heavy, your fingers wrinkle, the ground beneath your feet slowly turns into mud. Now imagine that feeling lasting for days, then weeks, then an entire season. You have no house, no dry clothes, no fire, no shelter waiting just a few minutes away. Only endless rain. For most of human history, this wasn't just bad weather. It was one of the deadliest forces your ancestors ever faced. Around 74,000 years ago, after the eruption of Mount Toba in present-day Indonesia, scientists believe parts of Earth experienced years of climatic instability, bringing colder temperatures and unpredictable rainfall to much of the old world. For ancient humans, surviving a predator was sometimes easier than surviving the sky itself. By the end of this story, you'll never think of rain as something ordinary. About 300,000 years ago, early Homo sapiens were already living across eastern Africa. Many people imagine those landscapes as endless sunshine. The evidence says otherwise. Sediment cores recovered from Kenya and Ethiopia reveal dramatic swings between droughts and periods of relentless rainfall. Entire valleys flooded. Lakes expanded hundreds of square kilometers. Animal migration routes disappeared beneath water. A hunting path that worked yesterday could become a swamp overnight. Food wasn't the only thing disappearing. Dry ground disappeared too. Without dry wood, making fire became almost impossible. Experimental archaeologists have shown that primitive friction fires become dramatically harder once wood absorbs enough moisture. Even a single night of rain can ruin suitable tinder. Several days can leave entire forests soaked, and without fire, almost everything else began falling apart. Warmth vanished. Predators came closer. Wet meat spoiled fast. Insects multiplied. Darkness suddenly belonged to something else. Modern humans often think rain is uncomfortable. Ancient humans understood that rain could quietly erase every advantage they had. But surviving the rain wasn't only about staying warm. It forced the human body itself into a constant battle. In 1991, hikers in the Italian Alps discovered the frozen remains of Ötzi the Iceman, who lived more than 5,300 years ago. His clothing revealed something remarkable. He wore multiple layers made from different animal skins. Grass fibers formed parts of his outer protection. A woven grass cloak likely acted as one of history's earliest rain shields. It wasn't fashionable. It was survival engineering. Long before woven fabrics existed, people learned that some materials shed water better than others. Large leaves, animal hides, bundles of dry grass, even bark from certain trees. Every environment demanded different solutions. In tropical forests, broad leaves became temporary roofs. Across Ice Age Europe, thick hides blocked freezing rain carried by powerful winds. The goal wasn't staying completely dry. That was impossible. The goal was staying just dry enough to keep living, and that tiny difference often decided whether you saw another sunrise. But even the best clothing couldn't solve the biggest problem, because rain wasn't really attacking people. It was attacking their fire. Around 790,000 years ago, at a site called Gesher Benot Yaakov in present-day Israel, archaeologists uncovered one of the oldest clear examples of humans repeatedly controlling fire. The discovery changed how scientists think about survival. Fire wasn't just warmth, it was insurance against a world that constantly tried to extinguish it. During long periods of rain, starting a new fire from scratch could take hours. Sometimes it wasn't possible at all. So ancient humans developed a different strategy. Instead of creating fire every day, they protected the one they already had. Ethnographic studies of hunter-gatherer societies, including the Hadza of Tanzania and Aboriginal Australians, show that groups often carried smoldering embers from camp to camp. A small glowing coal required far less effort than making a new flame. It could survive inside bark containers, or beneath layers of dry ash. Even during bad weather, one ember could become tomorrow's campfire. Lose it, and an entire group might spend days cold. Rain transformed every campfire into something priceless. It became the center of survival itself. People gathered closer. Wood was rationed carefully. Children learned to protect the flame before they learned to hunt. One careless mistake could leave everyone freezing by nightfall, but rain threatened something even more important than warmth. It threatened food. Around 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age ended, many regions experienced stronger seasonal rains than before. That changed entire ecosystem. Large grazing animals moved, river crossings disappeared, fresh tracks washed away within minutes. A successful hunter depends on signs: broken branch, fresh footprints, droppings, the direction of crushed grass. Heavy rain erased every one of them. It was like hunting with your eyes closed. Weapons also became less reliable. Wet bowstrings lose tension. Wooden spear shafts become heavier. Stone tools become slippery. Every movement requires more energy, and energy was something ancient humans couldn't waste. An adult hunter could burn over 4,000 calories in a physically demanding day. Missing several hunts in a row wasn't simply disappointing, it could become fatal. So people adapted. Instead of chasing large animals through flooded forests, many groups shifted toward fish, shellfish, frogs, freshwater turtles, anything the rain made easier to catch. Evidence from sites across Africa and Southeast Asia shows that human diets often became remarkably flexible whenever environments changed. Your ancestors survived not because they were the strongest hunters, they survived because they changed faster than the weather. But there was still one enemy that adaptation alone couldn't defeat. It wasn't the cold, it wasn't hunger. It wasn't even the predators waiting beyond the trees. It was something too small to see. Every puddle became a breeding ground. Mosquitoes exploded in number after prolonged rainfall. Ticks spread through wet vegetation. Rotting organic matter attracted flies by the thousand. Long before anyone understood bacteria or parasites, ancient humans understood one simple fact. Some places made people sick. Groups that lingered near stagnant water often paid a terrible price. Over generations, people learned to recognize subtle patterns: higher ground, flowing streams, rock shelters with good drainage, windy ridges where insects struggled to gather. These choices weren't based on science. They were based on survival. Thousands of years of observation became instinct. The rain wasn't simply changing where humans lived. It was quietly shaping how humans thought. And that's where the story becomes even stranger. Around 70,000 years ago, small groups of Homo sapiens began expanding into unfamiliar landscapes across Africa, the Middle East, and eventually Eurasia. Every new region brought a different kind of rain. Some storms lasted only hours. Others returned every year with astonishing predictability. Long before written calendars existed, people began recognizing these patterns. The return of dark clouds meant rivers would soon rise. Certain plants would begin growing. Animals would follow fresh vegetation. The rain became one of humanity's first clocks. Archaeologists believe this growing awareness of seasonal cycles helped shape migration routes followed for thousands of years. Entire communities learned when to leave, where to wait, and when to return. Survival slowly became less about reacting to nature. It became about predicting it. One of the clearest examples comes from the Nile Valley more than 8,000 years ago. Long before the pyramids, people noticed that seasonal rains falling hundreds of miles away caused the Nile to flood with remarkable regularity. Those floods covered the land with fresh, nutrient-rich silt. Months later, crops could grow where dry ground had existed before. Rain that once threatened survival became something people could anticipate. Eventually, they planned entire lives around. Villages formed, food surpluses appeared, populations grew, civilizations emerged. One of history's greatest turning points didn't happen because humans defeated nature. It happened because they learned its rhythm. The endless rain was still stronger than any individual, but millions of observations passed from one generation to the next slowly became knowledge. That knowledge changed the human brain in subtle ways. Psychologists today describe humans as extraordinary pattern seekers. Your brain constantly searches for cause and effect. Clouds gather, rain follows, the river rises, animals move, food appears. For hundreds of thousands of years, recognizing those connections wasn't just useful. It increased the chances of survival. Groups that noticed patterns made better decisions. They reached shelter earlier, protected their fire sooner, found food more consistently, raised healthier children. Over countless generations, the habit of looking for patterns became deeply embedded in human behavior. Even today, your brain still tries to predict what happens next. Sometimes it's remarkably accurate. Sometimes it sees patterns that aren't really there. But that instinct wasn't created by modern life. It was shaped by ancestors watching dark skies long before history was ever written. The next time you're caught in a storm, you'll probably think about getting home before your shoes fill with water. Your ancestors thought about something entirely different. Would the fire survive? Would tomorrow's hunt disappear beneath the mud? Would the shelter still be standing by morning? Would the children stay warm through the night? For them, endless rain wasn't background. It decided where they walked, what they ate, how they slept, when they moved, and more often than almost anything else, whether they lived long enough to see the sky finally clear. The strange thing is that every time you instinctively check the clouds before stepping outside, you're repeating a habit that may have kept your ancestors alive for hundreds of thousands of years.